Welcome back to my photography trip to Wales. In episode 1, I travelled from Dublin to Holyhead and spent the day at South Stack Lighthouse, where after a bright, contrasty day, I got some amazing light for sunset. You can catch the episode at the link above or in the description below. Good morning. I didn't get a chance to do an outro last night. I stayed there and the light just got better and better, and all of a sudden then it was dark, so there was no point. It's the following morning and it's bitter cold and windy, as you can see from all the layers I have on me. I'm down at St. Cwfan's church, and forgive me any Welsh people that I've butchered that name, but it's known as the Church in the Sea. Now the tide is in this morning, but there is a causeway that runs out to it, and you can get out, I believe, when the tide is lower. St. Cwfan's Church, as I mentioned earlier, is known as the Church in the Sea, and it's located on an island named Twr in a small bay in the Isle of Anglesey, North Wales. It was built in the 12th century, although it's thought there has been a church here since the 7th century. However, it wasn't always an island, but after centuries of gradual erosion, the church now sits marooned and can only be accessed during the hours of low tide. Once the land had eroded to make Twr an island, a small causeway was built so that villagers could still make it to the church. Now it has a connection to Ireland in that it was constructed in dedication to Saint Cwfan, who founded the nearby monastery over the sea in Glendalough in Ireland. As the waves continued to erode Twr, the cliff edge eroded and the graves surrounding the church began falling into the sea. At this point, the church was abandoned and replaced by a new church building located further inland. So what I'm trying to do is, you can see some rocks in the foreground there that are being used as a breakwater, and I'm trying to get those into the shot. Now my shutter speed is far different from last night. Because of the wind, the sea is a little bit rougher, not much, but at least there's some white water breaking over those rocks in front. So I'm using about half a second with a 3-stop filter and f/16 just to try and get some movement as the small waves, and they are small, come in and lap over the rocks in front. And that's really about it. You have the church then, and way in the background then you can see that the horizon is fairly lit up and the mountains are there as well. So I'm trying to get in all that. Overall the light is fairly flat, but there is some, I suppose, glow, if you like, on the horizon. So this is my first location. I'm going to start here, take a few shots and maybe move down the beach. I've never been here before, so again it's kind of a mission to explore and see what I can get. So this is the first one to start off the morning, and it's a bit disappointing. There just wasn't enough wave action to create that whoosh as the wave breaks over the rock. Even though I was using a 1/6 of a second for this image, there just wasn't enough splash over coming over the rock. Before I move out of here, since I'm in this position, I'm going to try with a 6-stop and a 10-stop just to get a different type of shot. And when I get them back later on the PC, I can see which works out better. But rather than move on straight without doing something, I'll try it here first. So that 10-stop has given me 40 seconds, which gives you an idea of how flat the light is, but we'll see how it goes. I prefer this one to the first one. I think the first one, just looking back at it now, it was neither here nor there. It was neither a fast exposure nor was it a slow one. It needed those waves for the 1/6 of a second to work. This 40 seconds here, I think, has a better effect, even though the sea hadn't changed much. I think just the effects of the shutter speed helps to create, for want of a better word, an image out of what was very little, to be honest. So I finally found a composition that I'm happy with. I've come maybe 150 meters down to the left, if you like, from where I was earlier, and I found these 3 rocks, and because the tide is almost at full now, the sea is lapping around them. And in addition to that, because I've come left, I'm a lot closer to the actual church, and it makes it a lot more dominant in the photograph than it was when I was further up there. I much prefer this composition now. At the moment, I have on a 6-stop filter, and I'm trying maybe 1 second, 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds to get the flow of the water after it comes in over the rocks to flow back again. It's not splashing as it was up there, so I'm not using the 5th or 6th, but it's just lapping in around it, and I'm trying to get it as it sweeps back. And as it stands within the composition, these are off a little bit to the right of the church, and the church is almost on the left thirds. Here we go, the same image, the first one in colour and the second one in black and white. The black and white one is my favourite personally, because I always feel if the colour is not right, or if the colour is not adding to the photograph, you're much better off to convert it to black and white. And sometimes that can work because you can bring in, deeper blacks and up the highlights, etc. And I think that works in this stage. The colours weren't strong enough, in my opinion, in the first one, and that's why I converted this to black and white. Now overall, I think the image is better than the other images I've taken at this location. Still not great, but the conditions, I would have loved to see kind of a rougher sea, etc. But it just wasn't to be, and to be honest, I'm happy enough with this black and white one. After that, it was time to call it a day at the church in the sea and head to Twr Mawr Lighthouse, which was about 10 miles or more away. So it was a short hike back to the van and then down to the car park at Twr Mawr. Now what I will say, if you are going there, once you park the car or the van, you still have another 3.5 k of a walk up the beach before you actually get to the lighthouse at Twr Mawr. Twr Mawr, or Big Twr Lighthouse, is located on Llanddwyn and covers the approach to the Menai Strait between Anglesey and the mainland of Wales. The history of the lighthouse is a little unclear, but it seems it was built in the early 1800s as a day marker, which means a tower without a light. There are records of a light being installed in 1846. Now Twr Mawr is just 10 metres high and 5.5 metres in diameter, but it did include living quarters for the lightkeeper. What's unique about this lighthouse is that the light was shone from the ground floor rather than the typical top of a lighthouse. This is my first composition. There's a mound of rock here with a big cross on it, and I'm just up in front of the cross because it gives me a lovely view of the lighthouse itself, but also there's a kind of an S-bend on the path leading into it, and that's what I hope to get, and finally then the steps up to it. Now there are a couple of people around, but most have gone home at this stage, getting on for late afternoon, and it's almost similar to yesterday in terms of light, in that it's clouded over, but there's a beautiful orangey pinky glow just above the horizon. Now I don't expect it to be as good as last night, but still it's nice to see that there is that little chink of light there. So for the first one, I'm not using any filters, or all I have on it is polarizer, 1/20 of a second at f16, and that's it. It's bringing in the little roadway, bringing it up, and that's all I have here. So after checking the images on the PC, this is the wide angle one that I settled for. It's actually a 1 minute exposure rather than the shorter one that I was speaking about in the video. And I do like the way the path just leans up along with that little S-bend up as far as the tower. Now I realise that the tower is kind of small within the overall frame, and it is the main subject, but I think the sky and the sea and the height of the actual tower up on the hill just make it dominant enough that it actually works. I stayed there in the exact same position for another 20 minutes, half an hour, trying all sorts of different timings and compositions, putting the tripod up, down, etc. So this is one where I zoomed in a little bit, and again it's a 1 minute exposure. Now you have the two people in it, so what I did, it's a blend of two exposures. I took one obviously for the lighthouse and the sea, etc. That was a minute long, and then I took another one at 1/60th of a second just to put in the two people to give them a little bit of scale, and I think it works quite well. I probably prefer this close-up of the lighthouse towards the wide angle one earlier. So I think at this stage it's time to move on and try and find a couple of different compositions before I get out of here for the day. In terms of composition, I didn't have to move far. That cross in front of me, I was actually up in front of that the last time taking the shot, so I've only come back about 10 meters, and this time I'm including the cross on the left of the frame. Now it's big, so it is very dominant. It's going to be much bigger than the lighthouse, but it's worth a go anyway and see how I get on. Now I am shooting at f/16, but just in case I'm just doing a focus stack as well, so I'm focusing on the cross and then taking that shot and then on the lighthouse itself. As I say, with f/16 I might get away with it anyway, but I'll have the two shots in the bag. It's just that this is only 10 meters away and that's probably 200. So we see how that goes. I'm happy enough with this one. As I mentioned earlier, the cross was always going to dominate the image. It's dedicated to St. Dwynwen and was erected in 1879. For me, the sky really adds a touch of drama here, and the pathway itself, it looks as if it's leading directly from the cross to the lighthouse. So overall, I think it's a nice enough image. So I've moved over to the right now. In the last image you may have seen that there was a kind of a mound on the right of the footpath, and I've come up on top of that, and just to the left in the foreground there's some lovely rocks, and again they have this yellow lichen on it, and I think they'll work out. This is a nice shot. I think they'll work out as a nice foreground, and then I still have the steps leading up into the lighthouse as well. So this one now and the previous one with the S-bend, I like these. I hope they turn out all right. I'm a little bit disappointed with this one. I thought the lichen on the rocks would stand out a little bit more in the foreground, but it seems to have blended in a bit with the yellow greeny grass that's kind of, I suppose, been weather beaten by the sea over the winter, and the rocks don't really stand out as much as I thought they would. Now don't get me wrong, I think it's a fine image, it's a nice scene. There's a lovely bit of colour, again that glow on the horizon that's been there the whole time, but just lacking that little bit of impact that I thought it would have. I think it's time to move on. If I could find just one more composition before I start heading back, because it's a bit of a trek back to the car park from here, and don't want to be doing it in the dark either. So we'll move on. So move on I did, but I didn't really come across any other compositions. To be honest, it was getting a bit rushed because darkness was closing in and I knew I had a 3k hike back, so I cut my losses and got out of there. But to be honest, I'd love to go back for a full day. There's lots of different places around that I think there are a few shots. So thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like or a comment below. Until next time, stay safe and bye for now.